Many of you know that I frequently reference SQL in these videos, and that's because Polars contains many of the same concepts. Well, today is going to be no different because we're going to show you how to use conditional logic. In SQL, we call these case-when statements. Now, before we dive into this concept, I want to invite you to get the free Jupyter Notebook associated with this video. Simply follow the link in the video description for that. Also, if you're just starting out with Polars and you're looking for a way to scale up quickly, I invite you to try the Polars Power Pack. This bundle of Jupyter Notebooks is exactly the reference I wish I had when I first started learning Polars. I've spent hours using Polars and putting it into practice at my job, and these notebooks provide you with ready-to-use templates and solutions. Polars Code Academy viewers get an additional 20% off when you use code PCA20 at checkout. You can find a link to that in the video description as well. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and dive into the concept of case-whens. Now, it's not specifically called a case-when in Polars per se, but there is this concept known as when, then, and otherwise, which is pretty much the exact same thing. And so we're going to talk through that now. Let's go ahead and expand this. And the data set that we're going to be using today is the credit card transactions data set. So first step here is going to be to import this data here. Let's take a quick look at it real briefly. So we've got different credit card transaction data here. This is all fake, by the way, no real data here. Obviously, we do have some ability to maybe perform some nice conditional logic operations on here, which is what we're going to do. That's why we picked this data set here. Now, let's go ahead and scroll down, and we'll start introducing this concept of when, then, and then otherwise. And so what we have here is we have a column that we're going to be selecting. So we're going to select the amount column, and we're going to say when the amount column is greater than 500, then we want to populate that column with the value of high. And then we're doing another one here where we chain it off and we say when the column amount is greater than 100, then we want to see this. And then the final operator that we'll use here is the otherwise. And so if it doesn't meet either of these two criterias that we've already defined, then we're going to say put it into the low category. So we're creating these spend categories saying high, medium, and low, and we're putting some conditional logic on there. Now, these are very basic. We're not going too crazy here just because we're introducing this concept, but you can make these more complicated. You can make them multiple conditions, right? You could use some AND operators and use different conditions for that. We're just keeping it simple for this video. And let's show you what that looks like. Okay, so most of these are labeled as medium because most of them are above 100. But this is how we're using the when, then, and otherwise operation within Polars. So very similar to how we do it in SQL, if you are familiar with SQL. I tried to kind of make it visually look pretty similar to how you would do it. All right, you'd say case when, then, and then you'd kind of go through that whole thing. And then rather than else, like what you would use on SQL, you just use this otherwise functionality. Okay, so that's all good and well. Let's go ahead and make it even cleaner. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to actually create some variables. Now, Polars expressions can be put into variables. It's something that is actually really useful. If you have a ton of stuff that you need to do, might make sense to do that here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create two new variables. We're going to say one is high and one is medium. We are going to adjust the criteria just a little bit, maybe kind of take away or change some of the logic that we have there. But it's going to basically be the same thing, right? So we're going to still say when when high, so we're basically saying when PL column, when the amount column is greater than 400, then do high. When it's greater than 100, then do medium. And then otherwise, we're still going to pass that low spend category. So again, nothing really new here. The only, I guess, the slightly new is that we are just putting variables here, which makes it a little bit more readable and might be a best practice if you're doing a ton of operations like this. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so you can see some small changes here, right? We lowered that threshold, so this one is now high, but looks very similar to the one that we had just above. Again, the difference there being that we used variables rather than explicitly defining everything. Okay, now that we have these categories, we're going to go ahead and do some aggregation on them, right? Part of the value of using case when or conditional logic is putting things into categories, and then you can aggregate them and draw some insights from them, right? So now that we have our spend category, we can go ahead and get some insights into how many transactions fall into each one of those. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to do a group by. So we're just going to call the data frame and then do group by, and then we're going to say spend category, and then we're going to chain an aggregation function off of that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, okay, take the amount column and count the number here. We'll count that as a transaction count. And then we're going to do the same thing, and then we're going to switch it out for the sum function. So we actually want to get the total amount that was in that category. So let's go ahead and run this. And you can see we've got our new data frame here. We've got our different categories, and it has already actually sorted these, so it's kind of showing you which one has the most. We could probably maybe clean this up a bit. This isn't super easy to read. Suffice it to say we have a ton of transactions that are in the high and medium categories. And so this is just one way that you can derive insight. All right, that is all we have for today. We'll catch up with you at the next video.